This is huge. Mythic Plus has been reworked with the affixes and how they apply to the keys with Kiss Curse effect, and how you're going to be playing Season 1 is going to change quite a bit with the current situation of the beta that we have tested just earlier today, and we're going to be talking about the future of Mythic Plus. And if this is just the first version of it, so let's see exactly what we're dealing with, because it's looking spicy and it's looking really good. To start it off with their design philosophy, I'm going to go over their blue post to actually clarify what their intention is for Mythic Plus and the affixes in general, what feedback they have listened to, because they have listened to feedback actually quite a bit, and where we can expect the entirety of the Mythic Plus system to end up being by the end of the beta and as the expansion launches. Without further ado, greetings Dungeoners, Dungeoneers! This week's beta update includes major changes to the Mythic Keystone affix system in the War Within based on player feedback. Yay! Our primary goal with these updates is to refine the Mythic Plus experience to better serve a diverse player base, which is something that we have been talking about for years. Previously, we approached Mythic Keystones with a one-size-fits-all approach, which proved challenging in striking the right balance and limiting our design space. In this new build, you'll see significant shifts in our design philosophy. We recognize the importance of weekly variety for those progressing through the system. However, for players pushing high keys, the variance or this variance has sometimes felt restrictive. We've also heard your feedback about wanting affixes with both positive and negative effects, as well as desire for thematic nodes similar to past affixes. This update to the affix system aims to meet those diverse expectations. We're maintaining the core goals of our last round of changes, but without the limitations of a one-size-fits-all approach. This flexibility allows us to craft a more tailored experience for each of the different playstyles. So let's dive into the revamped affix system. I'm not going to read word for word the rest of the post, but to kind of clarify and to make you understand what the one-size-fits-all approach was and why it's not currently the situation, what you need to understand is that each key level will have different style of affixes, and this will approach generally to how people play. We went over this in our wrap-up stream last week, and we were gonna have a video posting this as well, but with the news, that video is gone to shit now, so now we're kind of re-recording this after playing with the affixes a little bit. Essentially, there are two main types of people that do Mythic Plus. People, regular players, such as ourselves, who, you know, grab a couple of keys that are maybe lower, push them a little bit to where you would get the max high level reward in your vault, and probably stop there. And there are the hardcore Mythic Plus pushers who keep pushing keys higher and higher for titles, achievements, and prestige and all of that. Now, these two groups of people approach dungeons in different ways. Us, and maybe you as well, will probably just want some variety, some fun experiences, some interactions with the affixes, with your classes. You're probably playing alt, you don't really care about min-maxing the exact route and getting the best time for your key, although ideally we would like the key to be timed. And that's what one-size-fits-all approach leaving the system means, because we won't have that. Our experience will be different, where our keys will have switching affixes across the weeks or across the month rather, or, you know, throughout the season, while keys over 10 at the moment, we don't know if it's going to stay at 10, but 10 is it now on beta, will have the same affixes all the time. And with this, we can, you know, homogenize the dungeon experience in high keys, where people that are pushing keys every season don't have to like constantly take breaks whenever a combination of affixes happen that turn the week into a non-push week, and vice versa. Whenever the right amount of affixes combine in the perfect alignment transforms that key into the ideal pushing key. So that's going away. It's going to always be pushing week or non-pushing week, depending on how you're going to see some of this, because a lot of the changes are good, some of them are questionable. While for us regular folk, we're always going to have some diversity, some replayability factor with affixes changing from week to week. Now, to start off with the good news, we are saying bye-bye to a bunch of affixes that I know you wanted to see gone. I know you did. I know, because you've told us in the comments, and we have read those comments. Sanguine, Bolstering, Raging, and Bursting are gone now. To be fair, they weren't the worst offenders, but the worst offenders kind of have been taken out, so these were like the next ones to go, and they're not particularly amazing affixes anyway. They're annoying to deal, they just arbitrarily take you away from doing what you want to do. They're changing the dungeon pools and the route and the flow of the combat in an annoying kind of way. and there was no major benefit in actually playing them right. Now, we're also saying bye-bye to the affixes that they've kind of cooked up last couple of weeks with a, this mob takes more damage from arcane or fire or physical or whatever damage, right? Those are going away. Reckless, focused, attuned, and thorned are no longer going to be affixes that you need to be worried about. So anything that you have seen from the beta gameplay testing that we have done, that other people have done as well, those affixes are gone. They were an experiment, a project. It failed. They had the starting concept of Kiss Curse, which wasn't that much of a kiss and too big of a curse, to be honest, and the kiss kind of was half curse as well, so maybe it was 25 kiss and 75% curse, which exemplifies my dating experience. Now, that out of the way, we have new things to talk about. First of all, we have a new affix called Xal'atath's Bargain. This is closely resembling seasonal affixes that we've had before, and there are two versions to this affix: the Xal'atath Bargain Ascendant and Xal'atath Bargain Frenzied. Ascendant makes it so that while in combat, Xal'atath rains down orbs of cosmic energy that attempt to empower nearby enemies, increasing their haste and movement speed. If players disrupt these orbs, they claim this effect for themselves. If you have played Razageth in Vault of the Incarnates on most difficulties, you know when those orbs fall down and you have to interrupt them or crowd control them and they disappear, that's what this mechanic is, and you can see it right now on the screen. Total of 20 current orbs spawn. I don't know if we're gonna keep the same amount of orbs with the same amount of buffs, but the concept will probably remain, and each orb that you interrupt or crowd control or even damage through its shields will give your party a 1% haste buff for I think 20 seconds at the moment. Since there's 20 in total, you'll get a total of 20% haste if you manage to stop them from fully casting their thing, because once they do, they buff every other mob that's currently in combat with you, making those mobs get the haste effect instead, which is not fun, as you can see from some of this content. This is really cool because it definitely adds the level of Kiss Curse that we've been asking for. This is the perfect type of affix, and we hope that this Xal'atath's Bargain effect continues to be implemented across the entirety of the Mythic Plus system, because it actually involves you doing a thing, a combat, a mechanic, a puzzle, or whatever you want. It's not a puzzle, not complicated, and then getting rewarded for it. Otherwise, everything else just ends up being way harder to kill and way more dangerous. This is exactly what we've been asking for when we've been asking for Kiss Curse effects. This will, of course, can alter the way you pull a dungeon and can add some variety, because if this spawns at, let's say, the end of a pack, you'll probably want to stagger and get the full buff just in the last second, so you can carry it over to the next pack, maybe pulling more packs than normal, or maybe pulling them faster than what you would normally pull. Or if it happens in the middle of the pack or at the beginning of the pack, maybe you'll pull an extra pack, since you have kind of like a half bloodlust for 20 seconds, which is very, very strong. There are plenty of ways of putting this into action that offers some variety and some reward for actually being able to use your crowd control. With that being said, this is not equally doable by everybody in the current class pool. I have played as a brewmaster through these keys, and I could probably do the entire affix on my own. With leg sweep and ring of peace, I can probably do reliably at least 18 of these orbs. With maybe one I get to kick, the other one I get to paralyze, and then boom, we all have 20 stacks. Other classes don't have this luxury. Rogues, for instance, will have a hard time doing AoE crowd control, even with AoE blind. I think that's target capped, so you won't be able to do too much with that. And there are classes that will probably suffer similar situations where you need some form of AoE CC. I feel like this might add some barrier of entry for people. I hope not, because even if you don't have an AoE CC, there's still plenty of things you can do. Even as a rogue, you can kick, you can silence, you can blind, you can still damage through the entirety of its shield. If you have like a party of pumpers, you can probably do that, because there might come a point where you want to save this crowd control for the actual pack that you're doing and not have to use it for the affix. We've done these keys at about 5, 6, 7, trying to test how difficulty scales and how everything is. And because I was the most efficient one to do these affixes, I kind of always held my AoE stun and my ring for them, so I wouldn't be able to use them for the actual pack and the dungeon mechanics themselves. This is something that you might need to take into consideration. I'm not convinced this is a bad thing to do, because it's a trade-off. I trade off being able to control the pack with being able to get reliably 20% haste for my entire party. It's not a bad thing. That just puts maybe the pressure or the responsibility on my party to handle any other stunts that they need to do, any other kicks or displacements that they need to do. It's all on them. And of course, I could run into a party where there are other classes besides myself that can do multiple of these orbs at the same time. Now, Xal'atath's Bargain Frenzied, we haven't been able to test just yet, but it's still going to be available for this week's testing based on their blue post. What this does is non-boss enemies become frenzied at 30% health remaining, increasing their haste by 40%, essentially getting bloodlust, but increasing their damage taken by 20%. I guess this is not necessarily a Kiss Curse effect. This is kind of like an affix with a positive, and it's the OG type of frenzy slash berserk mechanic where you are faster, you deal more damage, but you take more damage. This has been something that we as players interacted with as well. I believe like the old cooldown for warriors, Death Wish, used to do something similar where you gain damage but you take more damage. The old Enrage effect for Fury, if I recall, used to make you take more damage while you are enraged. So we're not unfamiliar with this style of a mechanic. It's less interesting, I would say, than Ascendant. Even if I haven't played with it yet, I would be surprised if this isn't. The only thing that could be interesting about Frenzied is if you have execute type classes in your group. For instance, going back to Rogue as well, Assassination has the sudden demise, or has Zoldic's whatever talent that lets it deal more damage to low HP targets. Once you get into that execute range, that is even doubled, and that can probably justify bringing an Assassination. I don't know how this will scale, I don't know how it will matter. It'll probably matter in high-end keys, but that would probably be the only time where you might be excited for Frenzied, because they will still be very dangerous. 40% haste is brutal, considering that some of these casts can one-shot players with current tuning. Granted, we are using heroic dungeon gear in +5, 6, and 7, however high we are able to test the PTR, but my point still stands. The mobs will become dangerous. This is probably when you want to use that crowd control to make sure that the mobs get to use that 40% haste the least amount of possible. And these are just the first two affixes. We have two more, where one is Challenger's Peril. This is no longer a Kiss Curse mechanic, this is just a curse mechanic. It starts at key level +7. I will mention the key levels at which they start, but they will probably change. I mean, they have changed twice now since Dragonflight, so just take this with a grain of salt. Challenger's Peril makes it so that when you die, you lose 15 seconds from your timer rather than 5 seconds. This is less of an interesting affix. It spins the dungeon in a way where you kind of really don't want to die. On one hand, it's a very bland and boring affix and could be a relatively redundant affix. If your group is really good, then the extra 10 seconds penalty on a death won't probably matter at all. And if your group is really bad and just dies a lot, you're probably not timing the key even without Challenger's Peril anyway. But that middle ground can probably push people to be better players when pushing their keys, because their deaths mean more this time. So maybe it incentivizes people to use their defensives more, because dying is a bigger penalty to your overall performance. Maybe it's a good barrier of entry of people that haven't done high keys. They go into a 7, they see that deaths really matter, and they focus more on surviving, and then they maybe get in a better state of mind to be able to do +10s and maybe higher keys. So I can see this affix having a positive effect on the mindset of people, where it enables them to, you know, understand that Mythic Plus gets harder and harder the higher you go, without like the feedback being abstract and you couldn't really see it. The other affix starts at a +12 key, and that is Xal'atath's Guile. Xal'atath betrays players, reworking her bargains and increasing the health and damage of enemies by 20%. So the bargain is no longer applicable. You won't have the Kiss Curse mechanic anymore. So this is where I'm a little bit confused, because I feel like Kiss Curse mechanics or Kiss Curse affixes in this sense can be something that incentivizes people to push higher and higher keys, because the buffs, the 20% haste, starts to get better and better as the keys go higher. So even though the keys get harder to do, the buff makes you stronger and stronger, since that's how naturally scaling works with people's competence in playing their class and their overall character's power. And Fortified and Tyrannical have been changed slightly on how they apply. And in summary, to kind of give you a roundup of everything that happened right now, key levels from +2 to +12 will have the following affixes. Xal'atath's Bargain will start at a +2 key and will appear on a weekly rotation, so it's kind of like the weekly change of the affix. +4 will have either Fortified or Tyrannical, and it will rotate weekly. weekly. This time on beta we have fortified, and next week we'll probably have tyrannical, starting with +4 keys. At +7 we will have the challenger's peril, where you lose that 15 seconds on a death, and +10 will add the other fortified or tyrannical affix, whichever one was not active on a +4, meaning that starting with +10 keys you'll have both fortified and tyrannical. And this is where things get a little bit dicey, because fortified and tyrannical have been affixes that, let's say, the high-end players have deemed very boring and not really that great. And that's fair. I personally have the kind of opposite opinion, but that's probably because I don't push keys as high, where fortified and tyrannical add some diversity to the keys, where this week I get to focus on doing more AoE damage, like mobs and trash are dangerous, while the other week bosses are more dangerous, right? That felt slightly interesting to me. It's not like super great, I don't mind if they ever go away, but that just changes the dynamic of the dungeon slightly. The problem is that with this change, neither myself and people who like these two affixes the way I do, and the people who don't like these affixes get to have what they want. We all kind of lose in this sense. As far as I'm concerned, there's no longer a difference between playing tyrannical and fortified, and that kills the concept of tyrannical and fortified for me, while the people who don't like these affixes get to have both of them at the same time, and that is fucking whack, man. I don't know if this is going to stay. This is probably, in my opinion, just after reading it and kind of thinking about the last time I pushed high keys on live, which was a couple of weeks ago, that's fine. It just makes it like, fuck, I kind of don't want to play both tyrannical and fortified at the same time, because what these affixes do in a roundabout way is they increase the level of the key. When keys get higher, mobs have more HP and do more damage. That's kind of what fortified and tyrannical do. Also, they just apply either to mobs or bosses. So not only will keys get that increase in health and HP to their mobs, but they will double dip into that with tyrannical and fortified at the same time, which kind of makes tyrannical and fortified redundant as affixes after +10. You might as well just not have them there and then just make +10 scale way higher than +9s and 8s and 7s and so on and so forth. This has been just the quick look at the keys. We will be testing them on stream tomorrow. If you're watching this as we publish the video, you're welcome to come and join us on the beta and test these wacky affixes for yourself. Some of them are really fun. We're probably not going to be doing +10 keys to kind of test both tyrannical and fortified at the same time, but you'll get to play with Xal'atath's bargain, which is really fun. Twitch.tv/MarcelianOnline for the stream, or even here on YouTube as well. Catch you tomorrow.